My name is Lawrence Rodriguez. I am a youth community journalist for Regent Park TV. The Regent Park Social Development Plan, also known as the SDP, is a community-wide initiative aimed at fostering unity and togetherness among all the different residents and stakeholder groups in the community. The Social Development Plan is built around 4 areas of priorities of the SDP. Each priority area is represented by a different committee. The SDP committees are safety, communications, employment, and economic development and community building. In addition to the 4 committees, there is a SDP Planning Committee that meets weekly to help guide the activities of the SDP. The first SDP Planning Committee meeting of 2023 took place in January. The meeting was chaired by Greg Gary, an agency chair of the SDP. The January 12th Planning Committee meeting focused almost entirely on concerns relating to the SDP funding, namely the City of Toronto's staff decision to allocate 2023 funding resources without prior consultations with the SDP. The special guest for the meeting was Jennifer Hoffman and Oleg Segin from the City of Toronto Funding Unit.
Hi, Jennifer. Hi, Oleg. Thank you for joining us.
Greg.
I'm Greg. I'm going to facilitate today. Our process was going to be initially for the SDP to just give a bit of a presentation just to follow up to the letter. We're going to take about 15 minutes to do that. And then we thought you and Oleg could jump in and help do your thing. And then we were hoping to have a Q&A at the very end and then have next steps. Does that work for you, Jennifer and Oleg?
So we have reviewed the document that was sent to us. We could certainly watch the presentation. If it's the same, just know that we both have reviewed that in detail. And we have a bit of a hard stop. So I just want to make sure that we're able to answer questions and be as available to the group as we can within that limit. So however you'd like to proceed, Greg, with that in mind.
Yeah. Hi everybody. Happy New Year, everybody. Good to see you all. Good health. Yes, we are limited in time. Actually, I have a hard stop. I have an appointment. So.
Okay. Okay. Well, we'll highlight a couple of the points really quickly, and then we'll get into the conversation. So, Adonis, you want to just start out?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Oleg. Hi, Jennifer, and everyone else. I just want to very briefly start off just going very quickly over the timelines and when we started this discussion about meeting around the funding, the 2022 funding. We first started this initially right after the 21 funding was announced. Shortly after that we were told that there will be a review of the 2022 funding. And then January the 27th, at that planning committee meeting then, in fact, Richard had told us that we should start the process because Oleg wasn't able to be part of this process because he was being reassigned. So that was in January 27th. And the SDP review committee started meeting on April the 7th, 2022. To begin the process of making recommendations to the city around the 2022 review. We, again, part of the timeline is April the 28th, we released our recommendations, the first draft of recommendations to the Funding Planning Committee, as well as to the Planning Committee, the SDP Planning Committee. On May 19th, it was approved by the Planning Committee at their meeting on May 19th. And then on July, we started meeting with the city around the process of the recommendations. And it started that discussion in which Oleg was also present for those meetings as well. My point in doing this is that there was a collaboration. And as you know, we had come to a mutual agreeable principles as to the process of the 2022 funding. So both Jennifer, Oleg, and ourselves agreed that they would make some changes, and we all agreed about the process. So in terms of the process for the 2022, we agreed on the panel, We agreed that they would, I guess the major agreements was around the panel, which we agreed to, and around in terms of having the priorities of the SDP involved. And out of that, there was no discussion at all, no discussion around funding the 2023 proposals. So allocating the 2023 towards groups that have been who submitted for the 2022. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that we wanted to know why that there was no consultation with us. Even if the city funding unit was having those discussions, why? Again, we've been meeting since January of almost last year, a year. That why couldn't the city take some time to say, here's what we're considering? Why not come back to the SDP, since we've been working all this time around the recommendations? Why not come back to us and say, hey, we're thinking of doing this. We're thinking of funding allocating the 2023 funding to some of the groups who didn't get funded or wasn't approved for the 2022 funding. Why not have that discussion to us? And this is important because, and there's two things I want to say. The city staff has been meeting with us this whole time. I'm understanding the community funding unit hasn't been meeting with, but we consider city staff as the communication link between the city in terms of funding unit and to the SDP. And at no time did city staff indicated that there was going to be that they would allocate the 2023 funding to the 2022 proposals. At no time was this discussed with us. And it's really frustrating when, we're told that the process is going fine. There's no problems with the process. And then all of a sudden have this surprise announcement about the 2023 funding. So that's my first point. That's really my point about that. And so I'm just wondering two things about what the communication link between the city and the funding unit is, and why not have that, why was this decision made without consulting the SDP?
Thanks, Adonis. I appreciate it. Jennifer, do you and Oleg want to respond, or do you want to just go through the rest of the kind of just comments from the SDP?
Do you want? I was planning to have an overview of what happened during the application process and to give you a little bit of an update if that helps. But I don't know, Jenny.
Marlene, what were you saying?
We were going to give all our comments first and then let him respond.
Okay, we'll carry on. Oleg, I'm going to let this. We're going to finish up with the comments. We've got two other people, and then you take over and do your thing. Okay. All right, Dee Dee?
Yeah, the social development stakeholders table will ultimately be held accountable for how effectively resources provided by the city were used by the 4 work groups whose responsibility it is to implement the SDP. Therefore, the funded projects were to be clearly responsive to and aligned with the SDP's work group's priorities. But how will the SDP's Evaluation and Benchmarks Committee be enabled to measure and report on the effectiveness and impact of these projects in relation to the priorities identified within the proposals unless relevant information is shared and provided? We don't know which projects were responsive to which work groups' priorities. The groups report to the city. So can the SDP have access to project work plans and the evaluation info provided? Richard had spoken earlier and said that it may be possible, but it would require approval by Denise Campbell. So we're just wondering how you will address this shortfall in our ability to receive the information we need in order to evaluate these projects.
Okay, thanks, Deanie. And the last comments are Waleed's. Well, Richard, go right ahead.
Sorry,
Richard.
can you just, the question, I know there was 2 questions in there. Can you just repeat what the question is for us to answer back to that?
Yeah, whether or not we can have the information, the relevant information that we need in order to be able to evaluate these projects.
For funded projects, correct?
Yeah, because we don't have any access to the project plans, the evaluation feedback. We don't know which of these projects that have been funded are actually responsive to which work group's priorities. So we're in a complete.
That's your question, Richard?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that was what I understood, but I just wanted to make sure that was exactly what you're talking about. Thank you.
And Waleed's the last presenter for us and in this front part of it. So Waleed.
Thank you, Greg. I'm just going to expand quickly on Deanie's point and focus on alignment. Our goal as a social development plan is social cohesion and inclusion. And the reason why City Council approved $2.5 million is that they wanted to ensure that the community co-developed and co-created solutions through those 4 working groups to achieve social cohesion and inclusion. So I just want to remind everyone that that's why we're here, right? And I'm going to quickly talk about alignment, right? The reason why we have 4 working groups, the reason why we have a planning table, and that's why we have the city, TCHC staff, and other stakeholders at the table, is to work collaboratively. And through this process, that alignment has been lost. We had a community building working group not too long ago where we actually were intentional in trying to support projects that meet those priorities. But because of no communication and also the process kind of changing to this model, we're losing that very important piece of alignment. And also, there's a need for transparency and accountability as well. The reason why residents are at the table is so that we have an understanding as to why projects were funded and what priorities do they basically fund or resource. And it's the residents that take leadership, right? So I just would love to hear from Jennifer, Richard, Danielle. You folks are smart, intelligent folks who actually are invested in making sure that the social development plan works. That's why you're resourcing the social development plan. And we have a story to tell when this funding cycle is done to City Council and to the residents of the City of Toronto. And most importantly, if we do it right, if we work collaboratively, and we are able to collect those benchmarks and evaluation to see how effective these resources were, there'll be social development plans across the City of Toronto. And hopefully there'll be residents across the city to champion that effort. So I would love for you to talk about that piece because it's crucial. Thank you.
Thank you, Waleed. Jennifer, Oleg.
I think Oleg was going to start with just a bit of an overview of the review process and some key points that respond to the 4 questions that we have. I'm wondering if you stepped away. Oleg, are you still here? Can you hear that? Oleg, you're up.
Yeah, his audio is not on. His video is off, but there's no audio.
He's not on mute either. So
Yeah, the whole audio is off.
he might be talking or trying to.
Let me see if I can get to him a different way. Is he gone now entirely? Maybe that's a good thing because it probably means he's logged off and he's logging right back on.
Yeah, so I was thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're still asking questions of parks, forestry, and recreation, so that's good for me and my attendance. I hope they have lots more for them.
Yeah.
And then I think court services up too.
All right, so we'll get our full time. Looks like we'll get the full time in.
I also put the link in the chat if anyone wants to watch that budget, the budget committee meeting from start to finish. It's pretty long.
Okay.
And they go through every city division in this. So you could watch it or not. It's not the most entertaining, but very, very insightful.
Very insightful.
Yeah. Yeah. So Jennifer, do you just want to wait to see if Oleg comes back in, or is there anything that we can just?
Yeah. I mean, he was so integral in leading the review.
Time. Yeah.
Give him 1 second. Does somebody maybe need to let him into the room? Is there any way he's waiting? Like I was in a waiting room at one point.
No, he's not. He's not in the waiting room. I'll keep an eye on it. I promise.
Okay.
Strange.
Okay. Now it's saying that he looks like he's even offline on our chat system. So I will try and start and hop in here. And so I have some responses to the 4 questions that we were sent, which I think were mostly reflected in what the 3 presenters so far have talked about. So specifically around questions 1 and 2, you know, as you mentioned, Adonis, the 2022 process, it rolled out exactly as we had agreed to and discussed with the funding committee. So that includes, you know, those priorities, the inclusion of working group members without conflicts on the panel. But that, and you know, this answers, you know, one of the questions you brought up, why we didn't, you know, bring up the 2023 idea. It's because it was something that emerged in the middle of the review process. We said, you know, we got way more applications than we thought we would get, which I think is it speaks to a few things. It speaks to the open grant call, but I think it also speaks to those priorities reflecting what residents and leaders in Regent Park are looking for. So that answers one piece of that. But so to address that response, senior staff from both community funding and community development, working with the review panel, you know, identified this as an option that would greatly ease administrative burden on the applicants, so that we didn't see a handful of applicants get declined only to be asked to reapply within, you know, whatever month time frame. We hear that feedback constantly from applicants regarding administrative burden, and the city doing everything we can to ease that. Oh, sorry, I thought he joined, but he didn't. Okay. You know, in addition, when we thought, okay, here's a possible idea to approve more applications and, you know, lower that amount of declines. The other thing it does, and this was included in the note, is it addresses that very long-standing funding committee request to allocate money earlier in the year. So we had heard that. I've myself been a part of 2 different presentations that focused on that. So there was a win there from what we were looking at. It again maintains all those process pieces that we discussed for the 2022 round. So eligibility guidelines, review process, like these, none of that was changed. The allocations themselves were greatly supported by the review committee, which was comprised of Regent Park residents, including working group members. And by realigning that timing, the other thing I think it does as we look forward to 2024 is the whole timing of the process would align so that impact and investment reporting to council could be more in line with, I think, what council would see, where the deadlines that were set in the original report. In terms of why we couldn't at that point say that here's an idea, it addresses need, it also addresses things we've heard from the committee repeatedly, let's go to them and ask for their feedback, is once we're in the middle of a review process, we can't have a side conversation with applicants to said review process. And because the members of the funding committee and the planning committee wear multiple hats in community, we couldn't go and say, you know, let's have a collaboration on how we're going to approve or decline the applications that you've submitted and others. That wouldn't be transparent to the groups that aren't now a part of that conversation. It's not something we could do. So that's why we didn't at that point. one thing to note, and because I did notice this as well in the document that we were sent around 2023 priorities, the other thing that this timeline allows us to do is, I know the working group needs some time to develop those as the year goes on. So those could be worked on in 2023 with the 2024 call coming out in the fall to again release in the early part of the year soon as budget's approved, which would maintain that schedule requested by the funding committee. So that's another win we saw in this as a solution to addressing that community need. And just a general note that, you know, our work in the community funding unit is really, it's about addressing community need to the greatest extent of our capacity. And so with our granting, we're always looking for additional money, freeing up resources, looking for creative solutions to address need, and not just saying, you know, we'll leave it on the table. And that's something that we implement across all of our grant programs. We had the ability to approve extra youth grants at the end of the year, which was really exciting, and we continue to do that. So this isn't anything that's different from those processes. In terms of question 3, there was, and you know, and in general for this conversation, we can't discuss individual applications or the review panel deliberations, as those are confidential with the broader group. But applicants themselves are, you know, are welcome to, and many have already reached out to OLEG for feedback on their applications. And another note relating to that question 3 is that all the funded applications were assessed to meet eligibility criteria through the review process. The final thing I'll say before because I already see some hands up, is that, sorry, just got pulled away for council for a second there. The question, Deanie, you asked, and you know, I think it's a great point, and we certainly want to collaborate, and I can't see anybody that we funded having a, you know, it's a huge objection for monitoring and evaluating their projects. Like, that's not the goal here. I'd like to start by getting an understanding of what the practice for years 1 and 2 were, you know, when those documents were held, what was done with them, and how did the group work to monitor and evaluate, so that we can maybe then put in a plan to say, within the boundaries of our legal agreement with groups, because we do sign those, and many of you are familiar with them because you sign them with us, you know, what can we do to make those connections so that the impact of the fund is measured appropriately. So we're open to seeing how we can do that together. Maybe I'll pause there.
Did you want to take some questions now, or?
Yeah.
Greg, can I just say one thing? When Jenny spoke the applications, it was 1.8 million in total. Over the past years, we've always had more applications than money available. This year, we actually had a million something of applications that passed through the criteria also. So as Jenny mentioned, there was a lot of applications, but there were also a lot of successful applications. I just want to mention that piece, that there was much more successful applications. In the years past, there has been over, I think it was 1.2 million for 1 year, but there wasn't 1.2 million worth of successful applications. So I just wanted to throw that out there, just to put that into context.
Okay, thanks, Richard. Okay, so we're going to take just one question at a time, and then give Jenny a chance to answer it, and then we'll just kind of go that process. Ishmael?
Yeah, thank you. My question is, when you've received, in the middle of the process, you've communicated to community that you'll be funding $500,000. You did not communicate to community you'll be funding $1 million. Had people known that they'd be funding for $1 million, you would receive even more applications, knowing that the opportunities are even more. What was communicated to community is $500,000. People anticipated that and made decisions in regards to that. Do you not feel that there's any bad reasons or any negative reasons as to changing that? Or because you've listed all the positive reasons, which is more funding to people, administrative burdens. Do you not see any negative consequences of working with a group of people for a year, outlining every piece, and then communicating $500,000 will be funded? And then even previously, when they had recommended that we do the process for 2 years, you've said no to that, and then unilaterally then decide to go and spend what do you call another $500,000. Do you see no negative implications, or in your conversations when you were deciding this, did some negative consequences come to your mind?
So Ishmael, is your question that there was the initial 500K and then adding on an additional 500K for the applicants, and whether or not the city sees any negative impact from doing it that way?
Because right now we see that as what do you call not being transparent, because had community people known this, you would have received more.
Let's give Jenny a chance to answer the question then.
Yeah, okay. So that's the question.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. I think there's some level of speculation in that. Like from my experience, people are eager to apply for funds and do. You know, There's not many groups who say, "Oh, I'll save that idea for next year." So I don't know, and any better than anyone else, or on that one, Ishmael. The other thing is that we'll still have another round of funding open up within the same time frame that it would have if this path hadn't been pursued, right? Because there's that opportunity from the 2024 funding. So I'm not sure if that answers your question.
My question is any negative anticipation of this decision? You saw none?
Oleg is just signing back in.
So no, well, no, we were looking to see how we could meet that need. Like that's our focus. And that's the focus every day when I show up to work. One potential negative that I could see, although this is a project funding stream, is that if groups had wanted to apply for every year of the funding and receive it every year of the funding, that there could be a feeling of loss there. I could see that. However, we're weighing a lot of things at once here, and it's a project funding stream. It's not core funding. So thought that maybe some of the wins, including wins that align with what we've heard from this group, might kind of win out in that way.
Jennifer, where do you want to go at this point? Do you want Oleg to get his before we continue with the questions, or how do you want to move forward?
Can I get on the speakers list?
Do you want?
Sorry, I'm getting a call about council right now. If Oleg can just continue responding to the questions, but I've done the overview, Oleg. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks. Sorry, guys, I got disconnected for some reason.
Michael, Oleg's back on. Jennifer, the question that she can't answer you right now. So
missed all the whatever you discussed. But anyway, I guess there are questions. I still have a few minutes left, but not more than that. So
did you want to do your presentation part, Oleg, or do you want to start?
Janet said she did overview. I don't want to I just wanted to say that 2023 is being discussed. It's not a done deal. It's discussed right now as we speak. So we go as we're talking here.
Okay, so right now you're going to take over for Jennifer.
Let's take a few questions.
Okay, Adonis and Michael, you're 3 down.
Yeah, so I just want to address some of the issues Jennifer explained. We understand that there are always more proposals that come in every year, and to Richard's point, maybe some of them weren't as successful, but over the past few years, every year we have over 1 million proposals that come in to the project. So the issue of just making a unilateral decision to fund another, allocate the 23, to me is not really a great rationale for that. Because I even in 2004, you're going to expect more proposals that come in for 2024. In terms of, I guess I'm going back to the group, like essentially it feels like you empowered the review panel to essentially make decisions that the SDP should have been involved with making decisions. And that's my point, that we had agreed that the review panel would review the 2023 proposals. And essentially you gave the decision-making to the review panel to allocate the 2023 funding. That's how it sounds like to me. in terms of, and I don't see what the problem would have been if you discuss the idea of doing, if that was the idea that came up during the review panel, discuss it, but then come back to the SDP Planning Committee and say, here, this is what we're thinking about. What do you think of this idea that we open up the process for the 2023 allocations with the 2022 proposal? I don't think we have, in principle, anything against that in terms of if that came to us and said, here's the idea. It sounds like that would have been a collaborative process that we would have been involved with, not announcing that here are the grants that we have decided and that the review decided that they're going to do this. You know,
you got a comment in there? Is there a question?
So my question is, why not come back to the SDP planning table and the funding committee, the planning committee that you have been working with all year round, who have been reviewing this process all year round, and say, here's the idea that we want to proceed with.
Oleg?
I don't understand why that couldn't happen, and that's why that we're so upset, and that's why there's claims of not being transparent.
Yes.
Oleg, you want to respond?
Okay, I have literally a minute left. So I didn't know I have to go back, first of all, but second of all, the decision has not been made. As we speak, the decision is in front of the council. So no decision has been made so far. The panel has reviewed the 2022 applications, and they filled up the amount of money that could be spent. And the question was whether, because they said there is some more good applications on the table, and we decided to compile the secondary list. And we didn't know that, and until now we don't know if that this decision is being made. So decision hasn't been made until the budget is adopted. That is all conditional. So we submitted the secondary list for the review for our management approval. It got approved and it's in front of the council. So that's the short story of that. I'm not seeing that as a big deal, honestly, and don't see any problem with this. We tried to accommodate as many projects as we could with one shot, and if we are so close at the end of the year, the budget is going to be discussed. We just taking chances here. So we with due respect to the process, we haven't made the decision, and it's being made as we speak.
I think Jenny also.
Richard, go ahead. Yeah.
Jenny also answered that question that she wasn't going to come back, that they can't come back when they're in the middle of a process to talk to people who have applications within that process. And that if they came to this table, it wouldn't be fair going to just this table and no other table. So Jenny answered that question earlier in her speech.
Yeah, remember we were in the end of the year, so we had to submit for signatures by a certain day in December. We did as fast as we could. We moved through the process as efficiently as we could. We tried our best to accommodate as many projects as we could. And let's see and wait what happens. Maybe we succeed.
Like, you're repeating your points over and over again. I just want to.
Yeah, they have to go.
I know you have to leave. You always say that, but I want you to note in the chat, I shared with you the city council motion. There's an expectation for the city to consult the stakeholders table. You cannot make decisions unilaterally. You know that. And my question to you is, are you saying that you're putting forward this $1 million in spending through this budget process, and our only remedy is to depute? Because that's what I'm hearing. So please articulate what you're trying to communicate to us, because we're sharing with you our concerns of broken promises, you folks just doing things on your own.
Let him respond, Waleed.
So I want to understand why you're doing this.
I know, but you asked the question, let him respond.
Well, we are in charge of delivering a grant process. We are trying to deliver it as as efficient as we can, to accommodate as many projects as we can, to open up as many opportunities as we can. I don't see that I was making any specific promises to do contrary to that. And honestly, I'm totally on the opposite side. I don't see any broken promises here. So I just don't see that, any of them. None of them.
Hello?
So did
No, Michael, you're
we
next.
advertise? Sorry, Oleg, I just want to hold you accountable there. You said there's no broken promises. Show me a public document where the City of Toronto or the SDP committed to $1 million in funding. Show me one document. Because what we did commit to is $500,000 in funding because we wanted to give residents of Regent Park the opportunity to reprioritize. So you're taking away funds from a process by which even now, as working groups, when we're thinking about the priorities for the next year, we wonder, will they be now resourced? Because you're recommending that those funds be spent for priorities that could be outdated. How do you see that not being a problem? How do you not see that as not a broken promise? You're setting us up for failure.
We got it, Wally. You made it clear. You made it clear.
Yeah, so I can answer one more question. Who is next?
Okay, so that would be Michael, and then Gail. Michael, you're up.
Come on, Michael.
Michael, you're up.
Okay, so I just wanted to it was said that, in previous years, there was still a huge dollar value that didn't get funded. In terms of dollar value, that's true. We did have over $1 million in 1 year, but because we used the consensus process, very few projects were not funded. They were mostly modified, and more or less, almost all of them did get funded, or they were deferred to other years, but there weren't projects that were just turned away, except for two. There were two that sort of went to a more disputed part of the process. But aside from that, overall, we didn't really have the kind of problem that was being suggested. We, in fact, had a process that addressed that in a way that was actually beneficial for everyone. And I still think we could use that process in a non-decision-making capacity in future years to help mitigate some of the problems that result from sort of this third-party or panel decision-making process. So if the city feels that the panel has to be the official decision-making, then, that's the city's choice. But I think the community could still do a non-decision-making consensus process to try to sort of alleviate some of these problems before the city has to make its final decisions.
Thanks, Michael. We're going to have to get to the wrap-up part of it because they only have 3 more minutes. Gail, you want to make your comment?
Yeah, 2 things for me. I mean, a lot, but 2 things for me. One, what is collaboration? And I'm asking the city to come back with a definition of what is their tactful description of what a tactile description of what a partnership, collaboration is. Because for me, that's a partnership, right? We're going to together produce and make something together. And that means we have to be talking, we're on the same page, there's alignment. What I heard here were a lot of excuses, right? You're able to answer every single question. I was insulted by the answers because there were things that we've been asking for constantly and we never seem to get them. So there are these broken promises because you're saying, let's work collaboratively together. So that alone is a broken promise. And then you go outside of that and you kind of do, right? And then we use the words, well, we're responsible and that's why we're doing it. Regent Park residents are responsible for its community. And that's why we're here at the table fighting for this. As a community member, having kind of been through this process a few times, I know, right? It's the small things. I know based on the small things that the big things you're not going to get. I know that based on the small things, there's no collaboration with the city working. So I'm despondent. I don't feel as though, I know that, fighting to try to work with the city is not the way that I want to do cohesion and inclusion. It just isn't. Just this alone has created such a this fight now between these two football groups, which is really, really sad, right? So one great point that Ismail read raises, what did you think about the risks, right? You run a business, you think about the risks. An organization, you think about the risks. That's, I don't know, business 101.
All right, Gail.
Yeah. So again, my question is, what is collaboration? If you could come back with that, I think we have to start there. I don't think we can just continue like this. We really have to align on what we believe collaboration is between us, so that we don't set each other up for failure.
Jennifer and Oleg, the last thing that we had hoped that we could talk about what the next steps would be coming out of this. I mean, you've heard from the group. I mean, I think it's a conversation that's been had in the past as well, and just kind of want to reach just some next steps with the city on how the direction you folks suggest, and I think the SDP will make some suggestions too. Can we just spend 5 minutes before you go on that?
I have a couple minutes. I have to apologize. I'm just watching. I can't leave Denise without answers in a public meeting. But I have I can see for a couple.
Okay, so what is this, Jennifer, what do you think would be just one next step that we could take in this process as far as the funding? And then I'm going to have Adonis comment on what he thinks the next step would be.
Well, I'm up to hearing what the group would like in terms of the next steps. We are waiting to see if the 2023 budget is approved, which anticipate that it will be. We don't have any real concerns there in terms of this money. And I'm very interested in following up on the question that Deanie's had and the information around evaluation and monitoring and how we can bring people together on this. And so we'd like to follow up on that. And then in terms of the 2024 money and setting up a schedule for that, including the updating of the priorities as the committee sees fit. I think that's something that could be built out, whenever the group's ready.
Adonis?
Well, all I can say is that it's clear that we have different perspectives of what collaboration and consultation and transparency to us means. I think there is different, and we are not clear about what a partnership means and how we work together. And that, I think, is a process that we need to begin talking about, because we're from my standpoint, and just off of what Gail says and what some of the other perspectives in the room, we're not working together. The city is speaking one side, we're speaking another side, and we don't see each other's perspective. I've sat here and listened to everything. We would totally have a different opinion about collaboration and working together. And so that needs to be solved. And I suggest that we really work on using, come up with a process where the city, and when I say the city, it means city staff as well as the city funding unit, that we begin to really see, because we're talking two different things. I don't see that the city sees the vision of the SDP the way that we see the vision and funding for the vision of the SDP and the priorities. I don't see the process of in terms of the panels or the process of making decisions of how funding happens between the two groups. I think we're completely on a different level. And so I think that
Adonis, can you identify one thing that you'd like to see happen next?
I think we need to. Yeah, I think we need to have some meetings regarding the city and in terms of the planning committee, members of the planning committee, to really sit down and have a dialogue about the funding, about the process, and about working together and how we see consultation means for both of us. So that's one area that to me is important.
I appreciate that. Jennifer, I know that you gave us to 240. you have any just final comments yourself or Oleg? And then if you're still here, I'm gonna see if we can get these last two hands in because we have two hands left. And
I'm so sorry. They're talking about the youth violence prevention grants right now, and I can't leave her without responses.
Okay.
So I apologize that this timing, you know, in the end, you can't control when council's going to get to different items. So I apologize for that. But yeah,
can we schedule? Can the SDP group schedule a meeting with yourself and Oleg, just a smaller group, to speak to you about some of the concerns that were brought up in this meeting?
I mean, we have the funding. We're going to continue to work together. So, yeah, I'd like to loop with Richard and Daniela and see what they think is a good next step here. I don't know if having continued meetings with the exact same questions will bring us anywhere, will move us anywhere. So, but I do agree with you, Adonis, that getting a better pathway, focusing on that monitor evaluation that Deanie's mentioned, I think there's stuff there that we can do as we go through. But I'm so sorry, I have to jump off right now.
Okay, I understand. Oleg, do you have to go as well?
Yeah, I have to go. I am right behind.
Okay, Richard and Danielle.
I would agree with Jenny that needs to have the structure to agenda and some principles. How do we move forward? We cannot discuss the same thing all over again.
Oh, but we need a commitment to the time. If you're going to be here for a particular amount of time, you need to stay.
There's no respect, Dini. There's no respect. That's all I know.
Hold on. Sorry, 1 second. The time allotted for this was 2 to 2:45, correct?
No, I think.
No, because we're throwing.
I think Deanie's talking about time where we can sit down.
No, they're talking about the time of, it's 2 to 2:45, and it was unfortunate that there was a budget meeting going on.
No, I'm talking about when we set the meeting.
A longer process.
Prepare to be in the meeting and not worry about that they have to leave. That's what I meant.
For sure, and that'll be a conversation, like Jenny said. Myself and Daniel will come back to the table with some solutions on some of the pieces I think that Adonis talked about around the leadership or just the the collaboration together, and then Deanie also coming back with what has happened in the past with evaluation and how we can look at to make sure that we get the work plans of the other groups that are here that are attached to the funding groups. The other piece that I think
we'll have that conversation in the evaluation and benchmarks committee.
Richard, can I ask you just one thing? We have just a couple more comments. Can you take these comments back? So Rabia hasn't had a chance to speak at all, and they've been had up for a long time. So Rabia.
Thanks, Craig. Hi, everyone. I'm sorry I joined around 2:30, but I can tell from the theme of this conversation has been back and forth with the city. And one thing I wish, my question would be for Oleg, but he left. So I would say my hope that the city can take a step forward, and I could see that they are aiming to solve this conflict, let's name it, and they can come to Regent Park in person. I guess we have been in those meetings where people just say, oh, I have to leave out. I guess they have to commit a time, 2 hours or even 3 hours to come to the community, meet with us in person, and we can talk about those things. But just people come in and leave, and also I didn't check my email, so I forgot about this meeting until almost 2:30. So if it's physical, in person, we can discuss more and be at least I can get my point. What I want to say, I feel it's more social to talk to people in person, and we can find a solution because Oleg said, I really like the comment he made. It's back and forth. We are talking about the same issue and we need to move forward. And I guess the first step the city has to take, or they should take, they come in person here. I saw Richard the other day. I saw Daniela, she came here. And I guess it's safe. Share it with Oleg. Tell him it's safe to come to Regent Park. So let him encourage him to come in. So we can book one of those rooms in our community and we can meet in person, because this is ridiculous, especially when they decided as a city that they give the fund for this 2023. This is, sorry, I mean, especially for some programs in this community where if they, like some programs, they couldn't get fund last year, or this, they make it complicated. So they couldn't get fund for 2022, the 3, like this year. And then they are hoping to get the fund for 2024, which is this fall when they apply, but they said, no, you have to wait for next year. So I guess this is not fair, and it should be clear, what's called the clear clarity. And also they have to clarify that, like they have to really clear explanation why they have done this, because they feel by the overwhelming reason. I don't think it's a real reason. I don't think it's a real or something that reasonable to decide in a whole community behalf, because we need an answer, real answer. Like why you decided on us behalf to give another 500. So many programs in this community, like especially I'm going to give it an example, which is the soccer league. It has been here for such a long time, and they didn't give a chance. They haven't given a chance to get funds. So we're going to wait for another year as parents to get funds. This is not fair. I mean, for many other people too, but as a parent who was affected by this, for my 3 children who attend this program, me and other parents were really upset. And now the city is deciding that to postpone it for next year, not even this year. So we need another reason, like a kind of real reason. So I have a question, but Oleg left. So this is what I want to share. Thanks, Craig, again.
Yeah, thank you. Walid?
Yeah, I'm going to make it quick because I got to catch another meeting, but I'm clearly very disappointed and upset about the response from the city today. I just want to thank all my neighbors. I want to thank the residents, the agency reps, the organizations that deeply care about the social development plan, because what I heard today was an articulation of that broken promise of the city unilaterally moving forward with allocating an additional $500,000 without giving the residents of Regent Park an opportunity to reprioritize and fund projects over the next 12 months, which is clearly problematic. And what they've said is it's going through the budget process. So as soon as it's approved by the budget, through the budget process is a final deal. So I'm going to recommend to my neighbors, and I'll bring this up at the neighborhood association and other spaces, that we actually register residents to depute during the budget process. The deadline is January 16th. I shared the details on the chat, and speak to why this allocation is not working for Regent Park. And let's work with our city councilor, Chris Moyse, to move forward amendments to make changes to the $1 million allocation, so it's only $500,000. And let's be careful, because we know that the language proposed is conditional. So we're not recommending that funds not be approved, but only the funds for the first cycle be approved, and the conditional one be brought back to the community to be reaffirmed or changed. So that's what I'm going to recommend that we do, because any other step we take, there's nothing we can do. All we can do is basically talk about evaluations and benchmark and sharing information, but the decision will have been made by council. So that's what I'm going to say about this issue, because I don't see anything else. Unless I hear from Richard or Daniela or other city staff, there's an opportunity for us to have dialogue after this meeting, then we got to register, and I'll let my neighbors know how to do it.
Richard, did you want to reply?
Yeah, I think obviously that's the way council works. You're by all means able to go there and do that. That's a right that we have as residents and taxpayers, is to go repute and have these conversations with council. The other thing I want to mention is that, to be perfectly honest, and I think everyone will tell you, there's not enough money. There is not enough money. There's so much going on in this community, in multiple communities. Up the street in St. Jamestown, there's multiple things going on. There's not enough money. The thing that, Waleed, that you're talking about now is, if, say, the process did go back, we'd have all these things competing against each other. There will be no community There'll be no the Sundays in the Park would have to go compete against everyone. The Regent Park CC that has that new program that they started, they'd have to go compete against everyone. They would have to reapply. There's a Regent Park Film Festival. There's all these things that are the YEY project, the other youth project that's coming out of that is funded through, or sorry, granted through this process as well. All those will have to go back in the pocket and compete against everyone else again. We're gonna lose some stuff. We're gonna lose a lot of things. So this has become, and that's where I think the struggle is between the two. This is where the piece is that there were so many successful applications that there's nothing else for them to do, and that's the decision they made. So now when you come back to that, looking at it again, now we're going to have another 40 applications for 500,000. People are going to get left out. Things are going to happen. The other piece that we have to understand is this isn't core funding. This isn't going to be funding that this is one time every time you have to apply. It's grant funding, which is super unfortunate, but that's just the way of that it is. If you go watch the budget meeting, things are getting cut like crazy right now. So there's not a ton of money out there. It is what it is, and it's really unfortunate. And I think from every side, and everyone will tell you, it's unfortunate that there's not enough. But I do want to just throw that out, that there's amazing programs that are coming through the bottom half of that 2023, such as some of the food to the children within Regent Park lunchtime programs. There's some really neat things that are coming out of there, and I think that's the dilemma that we're really stuck in, to be perfectly honest. I just wanted to kind of
thanks, Richard. Richard, I appreciate that. Ishmael, go.
Yeah, so I don't think we should try and cancel or depute against the project that's been funded. I think those are projects that are coming from the community, and the SDP would be split. That is not, we shouldn't do that at all. I think our efforts should be to continue this dialogue in very strong terms about those three pieces. The vision of what it means to fund the social development plan. Like I was copying and pasting on the chat, the original documents say, very clearly it says that this funding process is managed, literally I'll quote it for you, it says, supports prioritized actions selected by residents on an annual basis through a public process managed by the Regent Park Social Development Plan Stakeholders Table. The question I want to understand with community funding unit is, how do they read that? That this process is managed by the Regent Park Social Development Plan. And what that means is that we design the process together, we negotiate, we agree, we make sure that it doesn't break city rules, but it means that they have to sit with us. Now, I asked the question, did they ever consider any risk in what do you call making this decision? And what I heard was that nothing was flagged. And that tells you the mindset. This feels like imagine you're a partner with someone and in that partner you've been talking for a year and you say, hey, this is how we're gonna spend 500,000. And then you negotiate and then you settle and then you come to that partner and say, hey, let me just tell you also, I spent another $500,000. And the answer was, well, we couldn't come back to you because we couldn't consult another group. Well, we're not another group. We're the stakeholders table. The planning committee is not access to recreation. The planning group is not a single grassroots group. The planning group from the documents is the one that manages this process together with you. So to conceive of us as individual residents and individual grassroots groups is the problem. So I think the conversation about the vision is important. And then also, how do we leverage this? Because if they don't take us seriously, and they won't have this conversation. Look at this. They said we're going to discuss this 45 minutes. I understand we're in the budget process, but to even say we're not going to come back because of the same repetitive questions, imagine saying that we're not going to come back because the same questions will be asked. Well, we've been having conversations with you for a whole year, and that whole year felt like a bullet train, someone always leaving. So anyway, I say let's focus on improving our conversations with the city as opposed to getting one project pitted against another.
Thank you, Ishmael. Marlene?
Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to talk about. I think that fixing this relationship is far more important than the other complaints that we have, because they don't understand what the relationship is about, having the relationship is about. They think that they're collaborating with us until they need to do something quickly, and then expediency is more important to them. And for expediency, they don't bother calling us. They don't bother letting us know. And I lay a lot of this at Oleg's door, because he likes to get things done quickly. He doesn't think about, that's who he is. He doesn't think about things like that. And that's where we need to be there to remind him that it doesn't matter that he needs to get things done quickly. This is part of the job. And that's just not how he operates. We know him. And he needs to be reminded that we're part of the picture, and he must do that as part of his job. And so I think that getting that relationship right, because that is the most galling to us, is the fact that we're not involved. And he doesn't have an option here. He has to involve us.
Thanks, Marlene.
We're all in this together. So until we get that right, I don't think we would have these other complaints if we had that picture right.
Okay, well, I just want to be aware of everyone's time. It's 3:00. Marlene, thank you for your comments, first of all. And just want to be aware of everyone's time. I think we're going to have to move this to our next meeting and really kind of do a debrief on this conversation and what the group thinks is the next step for the group, because we do need to start to, I think, steer this towards some sort of just resolution and steps for the SDP, how we want to move forward with all the issues, because they have been on the table for a while now, and how we want to manage this with the city, with Richard and Daniela's support, how we take it to just where we're in rooms where we can actually get to where these conversations aren't repetitive, and some of the things that are being said are resolved, and you get answers, and you can say, okay, that was answered. Or you can find out that it's not going to ever be answered, and you have to go in a different direction. So I do think I understand the group's incredibly frustrated, but I do think you keep hitting the issue as much as you can. And at some point, I think you have to say, okay, where do we pivot? And the pivot for me seems right now a smaller group to work with the city on some of the issues that we've discussed, and not present them as the same, but as a smaller group coming in and saying, okay, we want to represent the SDP on this one issue. I'm not saying to break up the group, but on this one issue and how we better this relationship. I do think that's so we need to figure that out. And I don't expect anyone to agree with me, but that's just my take on it.
I want to remind people about the evaluation for this year. We're starting again with the working groups. So the trainings will be on January 26th and February 9th.
Okay, thank you, Michael. If anybody if I see there's still some hands up, but we're done. I know, Miguel, we didn't get to you. I apologize for that. Okay, thumbs up. I appreciate that. Richard, just as far as you want to wrap up with what do you think is the next moves?
I think Ishmael had some very valid points, and I think some of those pieces I think the table needs to hash out, and then myself, Daniela, will go back to Oleg and Jenny and have that conversation that Jenny said we would have. I also want to add on to Ishmael's points. We also got to figure out how we're going to get funding past 2024 as well. So I think there's a ton of planning that needs to happen as well, and support that needs to happen on how we're going to move forward. I know that there's some stuff sitting in the community benefits oversight working group, but there's also other pathways and other things that we also need to look at to discuss on how we're going to move forward or look to continue funding moving forward into 2025, 26, 27, 28, and so on, right? So I think there's some other pieces. So Ishmael, I'll leave that up to you to have the points that you brought up to bring them to the table, and then we'll all come back to the table at some point and have a larger discussion what is collaboration. I think that not to be defending the city, but there's also certain things at the city that I think people have to understand how operations work as well, and also how this table wants to work and how we can come together and kind of thing. Because I think to Adonis's point is we are a little bit far away, but I think there needs to be a common understanding of both sides. And I think that's really what, to me, is what collaboration is.
There's been a drift from the time we started social development planning here in Regent Park. There's been a drift away from community ownership of our own processes.
For sure, and completely understood. But there's also been a drift on the city side to on the other way as well. So I think we need to figure out how to come in. And I think a lot of the just the direction that the city's been taking over the last little bit has a little bit, and during COVID also, that's a massive drift. And I think we just got to get back, and myself and Daniela, is one of the things is getting our boots on the ground and back into Regent Park, and kind of having these conversations and meeting with people. I met with Orville and his group yesterday, and that'll be kind of one of my things, is to start meeting with all these groups and having these conversations. And also the ones that aren't necessarily super attached, that are funded to the SDP, how do we bring them to the table? How do we look at their resources? How do we provide to them? And I think, Deanie, that touches on some of your points around the evaluation and them showing the things. So I think as a larger piece, I think we as a city need to do better as out of COVID now. Let's get back in there. Let's start like engaging and bringing people to the table as well. And obviously with you all as the community leads on this stuff, right? So.
Yeah. Personal style is part of the picture too, though, Richard. You know, the person who comes in brings a style of their own, and that style has to be aligned with what was agreed to.
Most definitely.
So, you know. Okay.
All right, folks. Listen, thank you all for participating today, and have a great rest of the week, or one more day. All right. So take care.
Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And please follow our social media platforms. And for more information, please visit our website.